I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for Monday, September 21st, 2020 to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Campbellini.
Here.
Mr. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Hanem.
Here.
Mr. McCann.
Here.
Mr. Richardson.
Here.
Ms. Stowe.
Here.
Mrs. Westphal.
Here.
6 members of City Council are present in the chambers, and Mr. Hanem is joining us via Zoom. So all 7 members of City Council are present, and a quorum does exist. I welcome all of you to our City Council meeting this evening. I know many of you are here concerning the fire department issue, but if we arrive at an issue that you'd like to speak to council about, raise your hand and I will recognize you at the appropriate time in the agenda. At this time, I'd like to ask you to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mr. Richardson. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
United
States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions to the agenda, I would like to add as agenda item 3A, the introduction of a member of our community running for the state legislature. Mrs. Westphal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add scheduling a finance committee meeting.
We'll make that agenda item 15A to set finance committee meeting.
Thank you. That's all.
Other members of City Council? Seeing none, Mr. Sanford.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Chief Snora.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aller.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
And Mrs. Bryant.
Nothing.
All right. With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and the agenda is approved for this evening. As added agenda item 3A, I would welcome Sylvania resident Nancy Larson to our council chambers and give her a short opportunity to introduce herself and tell us just a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time here tonight. I am Nancy Larson, and I'm running for the Ohio House of Representatives for District 47. I am the Democrat that will be on the tickets, but for those of you who are not that persuasive, I really would encourage you to take a look at my candidacy seriously. I had a chance to meet with last night on a Zoom call, and at the very least, he was polite and said he enjoyed the opportunity to hear from me. I live in Sylvania now. I moved here from Ottawa Hills, where I raised my family. I've been a social worker for 40 years, and my motivation for getting into this race has a lot to do with my background in healthcare and the pandemic that we are facing. We need strong leadership and people in the State House that are going to pay attention to medical science and to guide us through this to the other side. I also have a great deal of union support. I've been a union member myself, and I want to get good paying jobs into Ohio, specifically this area where the folks who have been unfortunate lost their jobs in the middle of the pandemic. So those are a couple of key issues for me. My website is nancy4.us. That's nancyfor.us, and you can find much more information about my candidacy there. I also have a Facebook presence, Nancy Larson for Ohio House of Representatives, and I would invite you to go on and take a look and see what you think. I really would like to represent Sylvania in the State House. I think that I love this area. I love my neck of the woods that I've been in for the last 30 years, and I think that I would bring a pretty even keeled, common sense approach to the decisions that have to happen in Sylvania in the State House and that will affect Sylvania. Thank you. Thank you for yourself.
You're very welcome. I wish you well.
Thank you.
And it is excellent that we have good people running for offices like you are.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I will just say that I did participate in a town hall because I wanted to get to know Nancy a little better. And she's a very sincere and enthusiastic candidate. And in the event she's successful, I'm confident that we will be able to work with her to make this, to continue to make the community strong and to get the assistance in the State House that we need.
Thank you, Mr. Hanum. It was very good for the city when Barbara Sears, a Sylvania resident, was on the House. And that there are advantages to the city with that sort of a relationship. So best wishes.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here tonight. With that, I'm going to go back to the published agenda. We're up to agenda item 4, approval of the regular meeting minutes from our last meeting on September the 8th. This is Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of the Sylvania City Council meeting minutes for the meeting held September 8th, 2020 as submitted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes of September 8th, 2020 as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Agenda item 5. I have a mayor's proclamation to present tonight. There are a number of the Sisters of St. Francis who are celebrating anniversaries of their professed religious life this year, including 2 members of their leadership team. And though I would normally come down there and present it to them in person, they are not here this evening. They may be watching us electronically, but I will stand and read it. And I want you to know that I will be hand delivering this proclamation to them tomorrow afternoon and meeting with at least many of the 12 recipients. So with that, I will read this proclamation from the office of the mayor. Whereas there are 12 members of the Sisters of St. Francis of Sylvania, Ohio, celebrating anniversaries of professed religious life in 2020. And whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize that the service of these sisters represents a total of 660 years of living the gospel in joyful servanthood among the people. And whereas this year's jubilarians are as follows. Platinum, 75 years, Sister Marie Andre Shorzempa. Diamond, for 60 years, Sister Anne-Marie Schmalewski. Sister Cecile D. Gladek. Sister M. Samuel Lubach. Sister Era Neas Samsel. Sister Kathleen Skov. Sister M. Petira Chariot. Golden, 50 years, Sister Sharon Deravan. Sister Anne-Marie Enema. Sister M. Brenda Hawley. And Sister Mary John Wagner. And silver, 25 years, Sister Pamela Noshbush. Now, therefore, I, Craig A. Stow, Mayor, do hereby proclaim today, September 21st, 2020, as Sisters of St. Francis Jubilarians Day in the city of Sylvania. We are very fortunate to have the sisters living among us. They do many great things for our community, not just Lord's University, but senior housing. They participate in our arts and in our education and are excellent members of our community. And even though they are not here, I recommend applause for them and hopefully they are listening also. Thank you. We are also fortunate tonight to have our fire chief, who attends regularly, as you all know, Michael Ram, joining us to talk about the fire levy that is on this November's general ballot. Chief Ram. And we welcome back longtime council member Mark Lukey, who is speaking with the fire department.
Very much. Great. I'm Mike's opening act tonight. It's great to be back in the chamber and see
see so many familiar faces. Mary, I like what you've done with the furniture. Very nice thing to it. And you've been able to figure out a way to get that an even bigger podium. For the record, my name is Mark Lukey, 4327 Todd Drive. I'm here tonight as one of the co-chairs of Sylvania Citizens for Fire Services, a group of more than a dozen community leaders, and that includes people that you might know: Brad Rieger, John Christash, Erica Burry, Jim Cooper, George France, Carol Lynn Cooper, and a number of others. As individuals, we all feel that the needs assessment prepared by our fire department leaders earlier this year had merit, and the final version presented in June represented a reasonable balance between two things. On one hand, an effort to maintain the level of public safety our community has come to expect, and a period of residential growth and changing demographics of Sylvania. And that needs to be balanced, of course, and make comply with recognition that these are uncertain and economically challenging times, especially for many of our citizens. So Chief Graham will give you an overview of that report about the proposed 1.9 mil levy, which is on the ballot in November. It's issue 13. I'm certain you'll give the matter your full consideration and hope that you will feel motivated as individuals to provide your support for the levy. I'll be here to answer any questions you may have after Mike speaks about the committee or the campaign. But now, Chief, let's do it.
Good evening, Chief Ram, 6868 Bramblehurst. I believe you should have all got a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. What I thought I would do this evening is just do a mile-high overview. Obviously, I don't have 45 minutes or an hour to go through every single thing, but I wanted to hit on some of the highlights. Why now? Well, there's been a huge increase for service. We have an aging population that is growing in the area. We do have 20,000 people that come into the city and the township every day to work, so that adds a little more to us. We do have what's called, we call it overlapping incidents. 52.24% of the time we have a call at one station, we get a call at another station. So with 4 stations, that automatically puts us down to 50% resources, and maybe even less than that with our transport service. So what we need to do, and why now, we need a second fully staffed ambulance. We need to have that second one fully staffed. Unfortunately, we've had some private ambulances in the area pull out, so we've kind of been left hanging in a few areas. So we need to be able to maintain and even improve the service that we're giving to our people today. We did have a 35.7% increase in runs over the last 5 years, and it's gradually going up. And you'll see it in one of the on one of the slides. We did a bar graph, and it shows it going straight through. Doing some comparisons locally in Ohio, we're more towards the bottom of the list for what it costs and what our employees make and those type of things. Our run volume is up almost to the top of everybody's. What we did with the state comparison is the same comparison that we use when we do the union contract negotiations. So we're looking at same size departments with the same type of runs, same somewhat geographic area. Now, when we look at our area, we are definitely the second largest department in Northwest Ohio. Toledo, then us. When you start looking at comparisons, it's kind of hard to compare us with, say, Oregon, that's 95% volunteer. But when we looked at I met with the mayor, and we looked at our comparisons and what it costs to have our fire department, even compared to an Oregon, we're very comparable.
Let me confirm that. We took the cost of annual budgets of the local fire departments, Toledo, Oregon, Maumee, Perrysburg,
yep,
and we divided those by the number of residents served. I was surprised that the volunteer departments like Oregon and Maumee were not lower than they were. They were maybe 10 or 15% below Sylvania Township.
Yeah.
And I was pleased that the Sylvania Township Fire Department is currently less than the city of Toledo, and even with the new millage, will only be a few dollars more per resident, and I would expect that to change as Toledo's budget increases over the next few years, and their resident number may come down some. Sylvania is not going to be the most expensive per resident, except maybe just in these numbers, but over the long term, will not be.
Yeah, and remember, we found out that Perrysburg Township was the largest.
That one was way out.
That one's way out of there. But today, Toledo Fire and Police got with Mayor Katzakevich, and I believe they're going after a levy for police and fire coverage too. So that obviously will make the numbers some change. So what is this levy? It's a 1.9 mil 4 to 6 year levy. It's again, we need to expand some cross staffing. We need to be able to staff more vehicles. We need to bolster our recruitment. In the next 15 years or so, we have a large amount of guys and gals that can retire. 20 years ago, we had a little hiring group, and that whole group is coming up under 25 years. So we need to do a better job of recruitment and retention and get out there and get some people on so that we can handle when we do have people start to trickle out on retirements. We need to enhance our community paramedicine program, and what that is we send a paramedic out with a social worker, and they go out and do non-emergent visits for households. We've been putting up handrails and meeting with elderly people that need help in certain areas that would normally call 911, and we go racing out their red lights and sirens. It's an emergency to them, but we can handle that way. We want to really enhance that program. It's a huge thing across the country, and we're only one of the handfuls in the state of Ohio that's actually piloting and doing it. So it seems to be working really well. A few years back, the state of Ohio changed the way paramedics can operate. It used to be a paramedic could only go to an emergency scene to take care of people. They changed our scope of practice to where it allows us to do non-emergent home visits. So that's where that came from. And I look at the community paramedicine the same as we looked at fire prevention 25 years ago. Fire prevention was the biggest thing, and look at how fires and all that have come down, and we've done such a great job with it. I believe this is proactive EMS. If we get out there and get to the people that need help with their medicines, and we can keep them from falling, and we can get them rides to doctor's offices and those type of things, so they're not per se calling 911 to go as an emergent. We're going to need to do some apparatus replacement, and I have that laid out in there. It would take too long to try to describe it. But as everyone knows with our own cars, they're not lasting 25 years like they used to. We've been putting stuff on the roads that are eating them up, and they just don't build them like they used to. We are getting good years out of them. We have a great mechanic that does everything he can for us. However, as they get 15 years old, we need to cycle them out. And I have a plan that I'd rather see us, when it still has a little bit of life left, being able to trade it in or sell it to get more money out of it than run it till it's dead. And all we do is take it to a junkyard and don't get any money for it. Because there's places out there that are looking for used vehicles that we might be able to get a little more money for it. Projected cost, and I guess I'll end it with this. The 1.9 mil for a $150,000 house would cost an extra $99.75 a year, or $8.31 a month. The 1.9 mil for $200,000 house would be $133 a year, or $11.08 a month. And that's pretty much an overview of the slide presentation. And I'm open for questions.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
The 1.9 mils is a new levy. That's
Yes,
clear here. What levy is currently in process, or is there a levy that's expired, or?
No, we have current running levies, and the one that's currently running right now will be complete. We would be completely out of money in 2021. So this is a year
without
early.
this levy, but at the end of 2021, there would be no funds?
Well, we would have that levy would be done. So our carryover in our fire fund wouldn't be.
The levy is continual.
Yeah.
So it would not meet their budget needs at the end of 2021.
Right. Sorry.
And Oliver, perhaps you can help me out. My memory is that the effective rate of your existing millage is about 5.8 mils. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oliver Turner, 2744% Drive. Correct, the current effective millage is 5.79. Yes. Every year that a levy is on, the effective millage goes down as property valuations go up. The dollar proceeds from a levy remain constant throughout its life. Fire levies are allowed to be continuing, but the dollars are constant, but the value of those dollars is less as inflation eats away.
Yeah,
That's the issue.
we have one that was passed in like 1982 that's still open, but I think it brings in $98,000 or $108,000.
Mhm.
So it keeps going, but that's all that, and it's at today's dollars.
Mhm.
Mrs. Westlaw, you looked at me.
No, we're just let's leave what Mr. Fry has to ask. I'm sure he'll
Sure.
cover everything else I can possibly think of.
Thank you, Mrs. Westfall. I guess a few questions, Chief. First of all, I appreciate the presentation and the information that was communicated yourself and the handout that was informational for me, and I hope for other members of the community who have an opportunity to review it. So in here you had some Q&A. One of the things you discussed was why does an ambulance not show up when a fire truck does? And you kind of described that. How do you handle, or how do you plan on handling as the presumably if the levy gets approved, making modifications or changes to that fire/ambulance balance for the department?
Well, once this passes, that will allow us to hire 6 more full-time people to put the second ambulance in 24/7. Right now, what happens is that we have one that is staffed 24/7 at Station 4. We have a second one that's at Station 3 that we do what's called cross-stacking, which I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. If it's an EMS call, they take the ambulance. If it's a fire, they take the ladder truck. By putting that in service all the time, that keeps that ladder truck from having to go for broken ankles and things like that. They will be able to transport and get back in service a lot faster than running with a fire truck. And then also that plays into the replacement schedule. Taking a $700,000 ladder truck or a $300,000 ambulance, I'm not a rocket scientist, but that's a heck of a difference when we have to replace an ambulance versus having to replace a ladder truck. So I hope that answers that.
Sure, absolutely. And from one of the things I know we talked about with our police departments between the city and the township, we have, I call it reciprocity, but basically a shared circumstance where sometimes we get calls from Sylvania Township and vice versa, where we offer mutual assistance. Do we have something like that with the fire department?
Yes, actively right now we have what's called an automatic aid with Springfield Township and Ridgefield. And what that is if we get a fire, they automatically send us an engine from Springfield or a ladder truck if we request a ladder truck. And then Ridgefield will put 3 guys if they can, because they're volunteer, and send an engine this way. And then in retrospect, then if they get a fire, we automatically send an engine, and then we also send our new battalion chiefs. I'm a firm believer if we're sending our guys somewhere, I want someone to watch over them too. And then we do the same thing with Springfield. And we're averaging probably about 7-8 times where they're coming here and we're going there. It fluctuates. Sometimes we go there a little more and sometimes they come here a little more. Depends on our run time. And like I was saying, when we're at 52% of the time, think about that. If we're at 50% resources and we catch a fire and we're getting an engine from Springfield, that certainly helps our community. But we do not have anything currently with Toledo Fire. We have a mutual aid, which means if they need us, we can call them, or if we need them, we can call them. But I have had conversations. I just don't know that we want our ambulances at the Springfield Park all 10 times a day just yet. I'm not sure. So
I understand that.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the citizens, myself being a taxpayer, I'd much rather be right here in Sylvania. But if they need us, we'll go.
Sure. Understood. And you mentioned a bit ago the fund balance being exhausted in 2021. So is this, for lack of a better way, going to be a traditional circumstance where the revenue, presuming this is approved, would exceed the expenses initially, but over time, there'd be a fund balance build up and then
Yes.
it would degrade over time?
Yeah. In 2015, we had a budget of $9,012,000, and we had 1.7 million carryover. So when we look at 2018, we had a 9.9 with a $3 million carryover. So in 2019, it's projected to have a $2 million carryover. And I did not work up the numbers for the carryover because I know that by 2020, our carryover was in the negative.
And just out of curiosity, I know there's, for every senior care center that we build, we increase the number of runs, I assume, the
Yes,
same assessment. But you also get the incremental property tax from that. Is that correct?
most of them, yes, we do. And then we just started a JED with Oakley Village. So hopefully if we get more of those type of facilities, then we can work as a community and work on that. But when we do go to those facilities, we are getting a billing back when we transport. We bill their insurance company.
That's part of the revenue stream.
No, actually, that's a complete separate EMS fund. This is all for fire fund.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Chief, I think you've explained your numbers and your request pretty clearly. I've looked them over with you on a couple of occasions, and I endorse what you propose in these sheets. However, as we've discussed, this is a difficult time to ask people for additional funds. And it has seemed to me that it's an appropriate issue for the voters to decide, but City Council may choose to endorse you directly on the ballot or not.
Sure.
One issue that you brought up with me when we met a couple of weeks ago was that when I asked you why are you doing it this year rather than next year, you were anticipating a levy from the Sylvania schools to be on the ballot next year, and you did not want to compete with that. That is an admirable thing to say. Mr. Lukey would be aware that in the past, when the schools go on, we try to keep all other local issues off of the ballot so that we do not clutter up the school issue, which is usually larger millage than anybody else's. I can't confirm that they're going to be on the ballot next year, but they've not been on the ballot for a number of years either. I noticed that part of your committee included the former superintendent. So he might have knowledge of that. I don't know. The new superintendent and I haven't discussed it. She probably hasn't tried to address that. But that would be a problem next year. Next year is not a primary election year either.
So we don't want to do a special election because if no
That's
one
very
else,
expensive.
if no one else goes, then we pay for the whole special election. I'd much rather, like we spoke the other day, how's my feelings? I know it's a tough time. I can say that the men and women, even though we had this pandemic, not one of them ever called in sick, said they're not going to go. They were there through thick and thin. And right now I have a 50-50 feeling that it's going to pass. But my goal as the fire chief and my right foot forward is I got to get it to 51-49.
That's your job.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief Graham. We definitely feel like you've done a nice presentation here, and I appreciated the feedback about the increased number of calls, and the population growth was one question I had. I don't think of us as having a lot of population growth, but you referenced that we have. So do you have any other comments about that?
Well, the interesting thing with, and just so you're all aware, we did a needs assessment, and I do have like a 70-some slide needs assessment if any of you would like a copy of it, because we started with the 2.4 going 6 to 8 years. I went out and met with Lords and some of the places, and they said, whoa, time out, a little bit too much, right now. Well, interesting, one of the first meetings I went to was CIC, and the first thing they were talking about was running water out Central Avenue, and they can't build anything out there till there's water. Well, you put buildings out there, guess what? People come. Guess what? They call EMS and fire. So it's there. It may not be directly in the city, but since we cover the city and the township, for me, that growth it's there.
Well, and we do know we're going to have some growth right here in our downtown area that will bring some
Absolutely.
additional people right here. So, okay.
I think, Chief, that this is a question I need to ask,
Okay?
if this levy does not pass, your current funding for current operations is consumed by the end of next year. You'll continue on with the same amount.
Yes, sir.
But it won't be the way you want to fund the fire department.
Absolutely.
What will be hurt? The fire department can't close a school like the schools are.
No, but when you look at a full-time fire department, manpower, that's our biggest fund is paying the guys to be there. So I don't like the scare tactic to say, if you don't pass it, we're going to shut everything down and lay everybody off. But it could come to fruition that we may have to lay some guys off and not have a second ambulance. And, some of the things that I believe we need to progress to protect our area even better than we do now, which I'd go fight a fire with any of the men and women we have. So, but I think if we can get a little bit more and progress, I think it would just it's what Sylvania needs.
All right. Thank you for that honest answer. I made you do it. You're not fear mongering. I asked for that.
I'm here to answer as best I can. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all that came with Chief Graham. Chief Graham has been attending the mayor's staff meetings once a month. He is excellent to work with and has been very assistive, particularly through the current COVID pandemic. We appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you, sir. Is that all?
All right, I would like to continue with the agenda. We're up to agenda item 7, which is the report of the public health hearing held this evening at 7 o'clock concerning the South Briar shopping area, ZA1 2020. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we did hold a public hearing this evening, and there was nobody here to speak in favor or against the issue. And the issue was the South Briar LLC and making a zoning change recommendation from R1 single family residential lot district to B2 general business district and R3 multiple dwelling medium density district at 5111 and 5123 Main Street. We did have some very good discussion though among council members. There were a few things of interest that we felt like we really needed to have some additional feedback from the person who was involved with the developing of this particular plan. So the meeting was recessed until October 5th at 7 p.m. And the hearing was recessed.
All right, we'll have it on the agenda again that evening at 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 8. You have in your council packets resolution number 18, 2020, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Mr. Schroyer, any changes this year?
There are no changes. This is something that the county asks us to pass each year.
This is fairly automatic. We need to pass it before the end of the year to make sure that it can be on the 2020 tax bills that go out in January of 2021. The administration has reviewed them. Mr. Schreier has reviewed them, and the administration recommends certifying. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 18-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. Resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies, waiving the second and third readings, and certifying them to the county auditor.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that resolution number 18, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of resolution number 18-2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of resolution 18, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 18, 2020 is approved.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed in this resolution that they asked for a roll call vote. Is that necessary in this case? Great. Just double check. Thank you.
Good question. All right. We did go through our old method of passing a resolution, which reminds me that we do have ballot issue numbers now for the proposed changes to our charter, and we have been designated issues number 1 and number 2 on the county ballot. We all know that the County Board of Elections really wanted us to do this. Maybe that's why we're at the top. I'm not sure. It is 2 issues. One issue will be to eliminate the primary. The second issue is the change to the procedures in council meetings and a few other cleanups in the charter. I asked why did they have to be separate issues, and they felt that eliminating the primary was a large enough issue to stand on its own. The fire alarm issue, or the fire department issue, which he has as issue 0 on what he sent you, was actually issue 13. I don't know if I ever remember Sylvania having issue number 1 in any election. That's okay. Agenda item 9, we have, as promised, this council meeting's assorted temporary easements for the Christian Road Improvement Project. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't think until after the last meeting I should have just tape recorded what I said at that meeting. But this is the third round of easements for the Cushman Road water line. I'll be back to see you 2 more times with these. I do believe, I believe the end of last week, we actually got the last of the easement signed. So I think we're all done with it. It's just kind of the approval process here. As before, it's just additional room was needed to be able to construct the project, and these are all agreements that the property owners have accepted.
All right. There are a number of them this evening, and I've distributed them around the table, starting with proposed ordinance 68, 2020, with the chairman of the Streets Committee, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 68, 2020, and all members of council having previously received copies. I will read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from Joseph Phillips for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 69, 2020 be read by title only, and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 68, 2020 as an emergency measure.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 69, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 69, 2020 is approved. Moving on to 9C, proposed ordinance.
Is that 68?
68, yes. Moving on to 69, excuse me. I was getting it in front of me. My apologies. We're at 9C, ordinance 69. Go to the chairman of the Utilities Committee, Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 69-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from Nicole Purcell for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, and waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 69, 2020 be read by title only, and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 69-2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 69, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 69, 2020 is approved. Moving on to agenda item 9D, ordinance 70. And moving on to other members of the Street and Utility Committee, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 70, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from Darren Snap for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds, therefore waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 70, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 70, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 70, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 70, 2020 is approved. Agenda item 9E, ordinance 71, 2020. Mr. Hanem.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I had you on mute. We're on 70, right?
71.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of ordinance number 71-2020. All members of council having received copies, I will accepting a temporary construction easement from Grandview Home Services, LLC for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance 71, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Mr. Mayor, I move final passage of ordinance number 71-2020 as an emergency measure.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 71, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 71, 2020 is approved. Moving to the second page of our agenda, we're up to agenda item 9F, proposed ordinance 72, 2020. This is Capellini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 72-2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I'll read by title only. Accepting a temporary construction easement from Nicholas Sargent for the improvement of Cushman Road, dedicating the temporary easement for public purposes, appropriating funds therefore, waiving a second and third reading, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that ordinance number 72, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance, motion carries. Final passage.
I'd like to move final passage of ordinance 72-2020.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 72, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 72, 2020 is approved. Mr. Aller, two more sets, huh? Two more sets. Charter change can come none too soon. All right. Thank you all. We're now up to agenda item 10. This concerns the Brookfield Estates resurfacing project. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The project is complete. During construction, we actually discovered the original plat drawing did not show that survey monuments had been installed as part of that development. The existing, at some point, that subdivision had been resurfaced and the monuments had been covered up. And so we did not anticipate any monuments being in there. Once construction started, we discovered surveyed monuments and most of them were in pretty bad shape. So we had to replace almost all of them. And that was a cost of $19,800 that we had not anticipated as part of the project. Our quantity adjustments, we were under cost for the materials for the project. And so that deduct was approximately $9,900, just under $9,900. So ultimately, we had an increase of $9,907.64 in addition to the original contract price. So the final construction contract would be $265,015.91, and we recommend approval of this change.
How does that align with your original project as budgeted?
Yes, it's actually still less than what we originally had budgeted.
All right. Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, if I might ask Mr. Aller a question, I'm sure you obviously know, and the mayor and his staff probably know as well, but for somebody like myself, what is a fund?
It's basically the piece that everybody will see is basically a metal plate that will be at a pavement level, surface level. But we also put, and this is what wasn't done in years past, but it is done more so now. We'll put a concrete, it'll be actually set on top of a concrete column so that it becomes more stable and will last much longer.
Do we have those in other streets around the state as well?
Yes.
So that's pretty much standard operating procedure?
Yeah. Okay. Typically, where two streets intersect, there will be one. If there's a curve, there could possibly be a monument. They're reference points for surveys so that if you ever have to, that's where surveyors go to first. If they're doing a property survey, they need to find property.
Great, thank you.
All right, we do have with us agenda item 10B, proposed ordinance 73, 2020, approving this change order number 1. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 73, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies. I will read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to approve change order number 1, final, to this city's agreement with Gherkin Paving Incorporated for the Brookfield Estates resurfacing project, which reflects the final installed quantities and actual work performed on this project. Increasing the contract amount by $9,907.64, appropriating funds therefore, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 73, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 73, 2020 as an emergency measure. Second.
Been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 73, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 73, 2020 is approved. Mr. Haller is remaining at the podium because the next item is his as well. Silica Road Drive Bridge Replacement Project. Mr. Haller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In February of 19, we did a study to replace the vehicular and pedestrian bridges at Silica Road there right by Northview High School. The estimated cost of that project is about $1.5 million, just a little more than that. In July of 2019, we submitted an application through ODOT's Municipal Bridge Program. And we were successful in getting that funding just in excess of $1.2 million. So we will have approximately $300,000 of cost into that project. We also would anticipate possibly applying for OPWC funding as the project gets closer, which could reduce that cost even further.
Kevin, could you say that again? I didn't hear you.
We also anticipate applying for OPWC funding as the project gets closer, and that would reduce that commitment even further.
Below the $330,000.
Yes, we have to be committed to the project in the amount of about $154,000. We're required to be at least 10% of the project, but we could get that other $150,000 from OPWC. And likely would be successful because we'll be able to leverage the ODOT funds that we're getting. So,
Kevin, I can't tell you how much we all appreciate your understanding of this stuff. I don't know what we'd do without you. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Part of that process is we do have to get a consultant on board to start the design process. We're asking permission to advertise for letters of interest from consultants. We don't plan on this work actually beginning until January, but we want to. It is a pretty time-consuming process, and so we do want to get that part of it started. That way, we can be ready to go in January as soon as we're eligible to. This will be a planned expense in our capital improvement budget that we'll be bringing to you in 2021. Obviously, should you not approve that portion of the budget, then we just won't carry through with the project. The contract will ultimately come back to you for approval, so we can't move forward without your approval anyways. But at this point, we are requesting permission to advertise for letters of interest from consultants.
Questions for Mr. Eller?
I just have a quick question. When you're talking about design, and I'm assuming you're meaning the structure. So is there anything in the budget for the design? I mean, we did name it after a Northview art teacher last year. Is there something in the budget that will make it look a little bit special?
Yeah, we should be able to put a plaque or some sort of that. The bridge itself. One of the things that we're looking at is in the proposed, and what it'll be budget constrained to a degree, but putting more of it, because right now there's two separate bridges. This will be combined into one. Right. And the walkway area, we're looking at putting an overlook or two into that design. So as part of the walkway, there'll be a little bump out where someone could, just stand there and watch the creek or something of that nature. So that's been thought about. Once we get a little more into the design and the cost and that kind of stuff, we'll see if we can keep that in.
Okay. Just anything to make it a little bit special so we don't have just plain cement named after the art teacher.
Right. Yeah. And we'll try to keep the flowers or something of some nature. Maybe it'll be post flowers on the post or something like that. But yeah,
okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fryer, we need a motion to authorize the request of consultant proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion to authorize the administration to post letters of interest to various consultants for the Silica Bridge replacement over 10 Mile Creek.
Second.
Moved and seconded to authorize service director to seek consultant letters of interest. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Eller, one more. This is something we've discussed for the last couple of months, and it is to bring a charging station, electric vehicle charging station to our municipal parking lot. Go right ahead with your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In July of this year, the Ohio EPA issued a request for applications to install level 2 electric vehicle charging stations around the state. There were 26 counties identified as priority counties, and Lucas County is one of them. The funds for this program come from Ohio's allocation of the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund. And so those funds, Ohio has decided to use some of those funds to install additional charging stations. Our proposal is to install a level 2 dual port charging station. It should have been the drawing that's on the back of my letter. That will be installed in one of the parking spots directly outside the municipal building here. We will be the owner of that. Our plan is to contract with Donovan Energy for the maintenance through a warranty program. That's all part of the grant application. And then we do plan to charge a fee just for the use of the electric. I'm still working with Toledo Edison on what that charge would be, how much the cost would be. But I've told that it's going to be very minimal, in the like $3 to $4 range for that to be done. The estimated cost for the material and labor is about $18,500. We're recommending that we apply for grant funding in the amount of $14,800, for basically 80% of the project. That would leave a balance of $3,700, which would be paid for as part of our capital 2021 capital improvement program, if approved by council in a couple months. The number of electric vehicles does continue to increase. It's becoming more and more common to see electric vehicles. And with the advancements in technology and that, I think that's just only going to continue. These stations will be able to be used by our citizens, people that come to our downtown area, or just people that are traveling through Sylvania. And there's a network that tells people that have electric vehicles where a charger is available. And so if they, ours will show on that network, and they would be able to come into town and charge the vehicle. So I think this is a neat project. I think it would be something, a nice addition to our downtown. And we request approval to apply for grant funds in the amount of $14,800.
Questions for Mr. Aller?
Mr. Aller, I think it's very exciting as well. It seems very appropriate. I'm curious how you made the decision to put just 2 in, if there was any thought to that, or if the grant fund opportunity limited that. But how did you get to 2?
We decided on the dual port. I initially was looking at the potential for 4, but when you put these in, you do have to make them reserve spaces. So I wanted to see what the use of these is going to be. The software that comes with these chargers will tell us it was used 2 hours a day or 12 hours a day. So I wanted to see what the use and what the demand was. And our thought actually is, I've talked with several people around the state. People aren't ready for this. So our thought is that a lot of the grant funds are going to go be left on the table, and that there might be another round coming through. There's also a different, another program that's in the works right now for level 1 charging station, level 3 charging stations. And those are quick charge. These will take, I believe, 3 to 4 hours for a full charge. The level 3 chargers will do it in less than an hour. So that round's coming up. So I wanted a successful project so that if a second round does come up, or a round for the faster chargers, that we will have a good record.
Thank you.
I would love to have the next level charger too. So, and nothing about doing 2 now would limit us from doing the higher level charge later, right?
No, that's correct.
Mr. Allen, first I want to applaud the administration for pursuing this. I think you need to go, you definitely want to shoot for level 3 for the next round if possible. Happy to help in any way, working with Edison or whatever, to calculate numbers on what's an appropriate charge to keep us out of hot water. If you want the assistance, if not, that's fine too.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Now that we're going to have a charger, are we considering having electric cars as our cars wear out and we replace cars in our city fleet? Maybe our next car that we purchase will be electric?
We haven't looked at that. The one thing that for our vehicles that we use around town, that is a possibility. For the obviously for our electric trucks that have it, we're a little bit there. We also have the natural gas companies popping on their door to go to natural gas for vehicles too. But certainly something to consider for the future.
And I know GM is workers.
Yeah, we looked at
that company Nikola, I think, who may be a fraud, but maybe they're not.
We looked at several locations. I should say several. We looked at a few locations. We looked at here in the spot, and actually our exact location isn't nailed down. We still do have some flexibility before we put this. But we looked down at our municipal garage, but that's really not, it's not centrally located for someone, for it to be easy for them to get to some of our other amenities while it's charging. This is centrally located. We still hedge a little bit on using 2 parking spaces in this municipal lot because it is so highly in demand. But putting it on the other side of the tracks presents some additional problems. It will increase the cost because the cost to get electric to it will be increased and that kind of stuff. So right now, I'm still planning on putting it in 2 spots out here in this lot.
Thank you. We have one member of City Council that does drive a hybrid vehicle and knows how to plug into these and does this when they're available. Also was not on the streets or the utility committee to read an ordinance earlier. So Ms. Dobb, proposed resolution 19/2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 19-2020. All members of council having received copies of the following by title only. A resolution authorizing the mayor and director of finance to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency Level 2 Electric Vehicle Charging Station Grant Program to execute contracts as required, waiving the second and third reading and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that resolution number 19/2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of resolution number 19-2020.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for final passage of resolution 19/2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 19/2020 is approved. Thank you for all your work this evening, Mr. Aller. Agenda item 13 is ordered legislation to issue a letter of intent to participate in a potential purchase of solar generated energy. Before we proceed with this, I recommend a motion of council to allow Mr. Fry to push away from the table.
So
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and let the record show that Mr. Fry is not participating in this discussion or vote. Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 67-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and the director of finance to enter into a letter of intent for the potential purpose of solar generated energy and related electric consulting agreement, waiving the second and third reading and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 67/2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 67-2020 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 67/2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 67/2020 is approved. Let the record show that Mr. Fry is rejoining us at the table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're on to agenda item 14. This is the notice of a new C1 beer, only an original sealed container, and C2 wine. Chief, any report on this?
I don't have any. Actually, our dispatch records section was running that for me today. At this point, I don't know any reason to request a hearing.
Okay, for location on this, I believe this is the northwest corner of Monroe and Whiteford, and no problems in that area. Schools are a ways away up Whiteford Road or down Whiteford Road. That's why I don't think there's an issue. This is Westwall. We would need a motion not to request a local hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that no local hearing be requested for this S&G Stores LLC request for C1 beer only in original sealed containers for carryout only, and C2 wine and mixed beverages in sealed containers for carryout only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded not to request a local hearing for this notice of a new liquor permit. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we will respond to the state accordingly. Agenda item 15 is committee reports. We did add 15A. Mrs. Westfall requested to set a finance committee meeting time. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that all members of council, and in particular members of the Finance Committee, did receive from Mr. Schroyer a schedule for the budget this year. And so the first budget meeting we're hoping to hold in the week of October 12th to the 16th. I am hoping that we can find an agreeable time among the Finance Committee members for some time on Tuesday, October 13th, as that's the only day that both Mr. Schroyer and I do not have a conflict that week. So with that said, I'm proposing a 4 o'clock meeting on Tuesday, October 13th. I'm open to other times as suggestions as well.
That works for me.
Works for me too.
Mary, that.
Doesn't work for you.
Evening planning retreat at 5:30. So how long would you?
So again, I generally plan for 90 minutes on those. So I wonder if we could do a 3:30. Could the group do a 3:30 meeting?
I think that works.
Mr. Hayden, could you do 3:30?
Oh, yeah, I can do 3:30.
Okay. And so we're going to do it right here in the council chambers.
And we will, I've discussed it with our IT director, we will offer a Zoom option for that finance committee meeting.
So that meeting would be Tuesday, October 13th at 3:30. And I would move that we have a finance committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 13th at 3:30 here in the council chambers with Zoom as an option.
Second.
Thank you.
And seconded
Thank you.
Awesome.
to set a finance committee meeting for Tuesday, October 13th at 3:30 PM here in the council chambers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and that meeting is set. Any additional committee reports to be made at this time? Or committee referrals? Hearing none, we are at the end of our council agenda. The good information items are just the bank reconciliation. Also,
Mr. Mayor, I'll just note that looks like our revenues are pretty good.
Mhm.
Mr. Schroyer is shaking his head yes. Any comments, Mr. Schroyer?
No,
We are down
I'll report again.
a little bit. All right. Board of Architecture review and municipal planning meeting minutes are attached as well.
I will just note that Toby was right and my concerns were misplaced.
I'm not sure whether that reflects on anybody's crystal balls. We're fortunate to be where we're at. And the state and the federal government are helping us out a little bit as well. So we appreciate that. We're at the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries and the council stands adjourned for 2 weeks until our next meeting on Monday, October the 5th at 7:30 PM. Thank you for attending.